Welcome to the deep dive. You're probably here because, like us, you want to get a quick handle on complex stuff. And today we've got something really interesting.
We do. We're looking into Compare.
Right, the self-aware director of the System Interface Agency.
Yeah.
We're basically trying to understand how this, well, sophisticated internal manager is getting an upgrade.
And the material for this is quite layered. We've got an internal document, this actionplan.md, detailing its strengths, its weaknesses. Then there's a response to that plan, offering some, let's say, higher level thoughts.
Okay.
And what's really fascinating, I think, are these excerpts looking at how AI uses external tools. The tool planner idea.
Right, that analogy seems key. So we have stuff like Compare's Tool-Planner, some background papers on describing tools for models, and even a blueprint of example tools.
Exactly, all feeding into this.
So our mission here really is to unpack how this tool planner concept, originally for AIs using external tools, is being cleverly applied internally to make Compare work better, more reliably.
And the insights here aren't just about Compare. They touch on making any complex system, maybe even your own projects, run smoother.
Good point. So let's start with that initial assessment. The action plan. What did it find?
Well, first off, self-awareness. It acknowledges Compare does understand its role. It can self-correct, which is pretty advanced.
But there's always a but.
But yeah, the plan highlighted a need for more explicit self-reflection, almost like building in a formal review process for its own actions.
Okay, like consciously thinking about how it did something, not just that it did it. What about integrity?
Integrity, meaning honesty and reliability here. The assessment said Compare was, honest about its plan, what it intended to do.
Transparency is good.
Definitely. But the reliability in actually executing that plan, especially when delegating tasks, that was flagged as an area needing improvement.
The classic follow-through issue. Sounds familiar to anyone managing, well, anything complex. You can have the best plan, but if the execution falters...
Exactly. And that ties into collaboration and coordination. It tried to collaborate, delegating to these other agents, Fizz, QllickFizz for content, Fozz for clarity.
So it has internal helpers.
Deem so.
Yeah.
But the coordination, the handoffs between them lacked precision. So the final output wasn't always quite on target.
Like a relay team fumbling the baton.
Sort of, yeah. Throw a good analogy. And communication was another point.
How so?
The final explanation Compare gave might have been clear, but the initial instructions it gave when delegating, often not specific enough.
So the helpers, Fizz and the others, didn't get a super clear brief.
Pretty much. It's like giving a vague task and hoping they fill in the blanks correctly. Risky.
And user centricity. Did it ultimately help the user?
Eventually, yes. That self-correction capability kicked in, which is a plus.
Yeah.
But the initial interaction wasn't as direct or, well, helpful as it could have been.
So the journey wasn't smooth, even if the destination was okay.
Right. Which leads to efficiency. The action plan basically asked, was delegating the explanation of its own core function really the most efficient path?
Or should Compare have just handled that bit itself?
Exactly. When to delegate, when to centralize, a key strategic question for Compare.
Okay, so that's the diagnosis from the action plan. What about the proposed treatments? The response document?
Right. The response offered some interesting meta considerations. For self-awareness, they proposed something called placeholder protocols.
Placeholder protocols. Sounds intriguing. Like a temporary fix?
Not quite a fix. More like an internal logbook or scratch pad. A way for Compare to formally record its reasons for making certain decisions as it goes.
So it builds a record of its own thinking process to learn from.
Precisely. Deepens that self-reflection capability we talked about. And for reliability.
The delegation issue.
Yeah. The suggestion was simple but powerful. Add a verification phase. After every delegated task, Compare checks. Was this done correctly, as intended?
Like a built-in quality control step. Makes sense.
Definitely. Then for collaboration, the coordination problem, the idea was clearer role definition for agents like Fizz and Fozz.
Everyone knows exactly what they're supposed to do.
And maybe even formalizing Fozz's role more as a coordinator, ensuring tasks are crystal clear before they get delegated.
Proactive clarification. I like it.
And tied to that, for communication, they mentioned establishing protocols using meta templates.
Meta templates, like pre-built instruction format.
Essentially, yes. Standardized blueprints for delegation, ensuring all the necessary details required, output, format, success criteria are always included. Embedded precision, they called it.
Takes the guesswork out of delegation.
Hopefully. And for user centricity, the push was to prioritize understanding user intent right from the get-go.
Align everything immediately with what the user actually needs.
Right. And finally, efficiency. It echoed the action plan. Strategically reevaluate that balance between delegating tasks and Compere just handling them directly.
Especially for core functions. Okay, that gives us a good map of the problems and potential fixes. Now let's get to this tool planner analogy. You said it's key.
It really is. So Tool-Planner, based on the sources, is a concept developed for large language models, LLMs, using external tools or APIs.
Okay, like an AI needing to use a calculator or search the web.
Exactly. The core idea of Tool-Planner is to organize those external tools not just as a big list, but into logical toolkits based on their function.
So instead of seeing calculator API, search API, translation API, the LLM sees maybe a calculation toolkit, an information retrieval toolkit, a language toolkit.
Precisely that. It adds a layer of organization, like organizing your garage tools into boxes, plumbing, electrical, gardening.
Got it. So how does this organizational idea apply to Compere's internal agents? Fizz, QllickFizz, Fozz.
This is the clever part. The analogy suggests viewing Compere's internal delegates as if they belong to functional toolkits.
So Fizz and QllickFizz, the content creators, they're in the content generation toolkit.
Exactly. And Fozz, the one ensuring clarity, could be seen as part of a communication refinement toolkit.
I see. So Compere wouldn't just randomly tick Fizz. It would think, I need content generation, and then engage that toolkit.
Right. It's a more structured, strategic approach to using its internal resources.
So what's the real benefit here? Is it just about having backups? Or is it deeper?
It's definitely deeper than just backups. It introduces a sort of hierarchical problem-solving strategy, very much like how, effective human teams work. You have specialists.
Right.
But crucially, you also have strategies for when the first specialist approach doesn't work.
Okay, explain that. How does the toolkit idea help when things go wrong?
This is where in-toolkit exploration comes in. Let's say Compere engages the content generation toolkit and tasks Fizz, but Fizz's output isn't quite right.
Okay.
Instead of Compere immediately giving up or escalating, it stays within the content generation toolkit and tries QllickFizz instead.
Trying another tool from the same box.
Yeah.
Like using a different wrench if the first one slips.
Exactly. And this directly addresses that lack of reliability in executing the plan issue we saw in the action plan. It builds in resilience at the functional level.
Okay, that makes sense. But what if neither Fizz nor QllickFizz works? What if the whole content generation toolkit seems to be failing?
Good question. That's the next level. Cross-toolkit exploration.
Changing toolkits entirely.
Yes. If the entire content generation toolkit is producing unusable results, maybe the problem isn't the generation itself, but the instructions.
The lack of specificity problem again.
Right. So Compere might pause, revise its plan, and decide to engage the communication refinement toolkit, first Fozz, to clarify the instructions before going back to the content generation toolkit.
So it's like realizing you asked the wrong question, stepping back, refining the question with Fozz, and then asking Fizz or QllickFizz again. That addresses the coordination issues too.
Precisely. It allows the system to diagnose the problem at a higher level. Is it execution within a function? Or is the plan or the input to the function flawed?
But how does Compere know when to switch from in-toolkit to cross-toolkit exploration? Is there a risk it gets stuck just trying different content generators when the instructions are bad?
That's a critical design point. The system would need internal monitoring. It likely tracks success metrics for each toolkit attempt. If, say, 2 or 3 tries within the content generation toolkit fail, that failure threshold would trigger the cross-toolkit strategy. Compere would then reassess, okay, this function isn't working, maybe I need to adjust the input or the overall plan.
Got it. Built-in escalation logic based on performance. And this whole approach relies heavily on knowing what each toolkit or each agent is actually for, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Just like Tool-Planner needs clear descriptions for external tools, this internal application demands clearly defined roles, capabilities, and expected outputs for Fizz, Fozz, and any others. The toolkits themselves need documentation, essentially.
Addresses that lack of specificity from the start, then. Clarity is key.
It really is. Clarity at the component level enables effective orchestration at the system level.
And does this relate back to efficiency? The idea that sometimes Compere should just do things itself.
Yes, directly. In this model, Compare could assess a task and decide, you know what, this is straightforward enough that engaging the whole content generation toolkit is overkill. I'll handle this directly.
Bypassing the toolkit for simple core tasks.
Yeah.
Like using the tool you already have in your hand instead of rummaging through the toolbox.
Exactly. It optimizes the workflow. And there's another benefit, enhanced self-awareness.
How so?
By monitoring which toolkits succeed or fail on which tasks, Compare learns over time. For this type of request, the content generation toolkit usually needs clarification first. Or, this toolkit is highly reliable for that kind of analysis.
So it's building an internal performance database for its own components.
Right. A feedback loop that refines its planning and delegation strategies continuously.
This tool planner framework seems really powerful for structuring Compare's internal operations. You mentioned the need for clear descriptions, though.
Yeah.
How does that work for these internal toolkits?
It mirrors the external world. Just like an LLM needs API documentation, Compare needs, well, internal documentation for its components. This means explicitly defining Fizz's role, QllickFizz's role, Fozz's role, what they do, what input they need, what output they provide.
Like job descriptions for internal agents.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Defining the specialties of each toolkit and agent is fundamental for Compare to know which toolkit to engage and how to task it effectively.
And the sources even gave us that tool's blueprint, with specific examples, a tool descriptor, task generator, deliverable integrator. How would Tool Planner apply within those components? Are they also like mini compares with their own toolkits?
That's a great way to think about it. It suggests a potentially recursive or layered structure. Take the tool descriptor. Its job is to create descriptions of needed tools.
Okay.
Internally, it might have its own toolkit, maybe an NLP techniques toolkit. If its first attempt at describing something using, say, technique A is a bit vague.
It uses in-toolkit exploration.
Right. It tries technique B from the same NLP toolkit. If that still isn't working, maybe the concept itself is ambiguous. So cross-toolkit exploration for the tool descriptor might involve querying an external knowledge base or even flagging it for human review.
Wow, okay, so layers of toolkits. What about the task generator, the one breaking down big projects?
Similar idea. It could have a task decomposition strategies toolkit. Strategy 1 doesn't yield logical subtasks. In toolkit exploration, try strategy 2.
And if the whole decomposition is problematic?
Cross-toolkit exploration might mean looping back to the tool descriptor. Is the goal clear enough to decompose? Or, again, escalating to a human engineer for guidance on structuring the task.
And the final one, the deliverable integrator. Assembling the pieces, checking quality.
You guessed it. An integration and validation methods toolkit. Method 1 causes conflicts. In toolkit, try method 2. If there are fundamental inconsistencies, it can't resolve.
Cross-toolkit.
Yeah.
Escalate back up the chain, maybe to humans again.
Exactly. It highlights how this toolkit and exploration model can provide structure and resilience at multiple levels within a complex system like Compare.
So it's not just Compare managing its main agents, but potentially those agents managing their own internal methods using the same principles. It's quite elegant, actually.
It is. It builds in problem solving and adaptation throughout the system.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've taken quite a deep dive today. It seems applying this tool planner thinking to Compare is, well, a really smart way to manage its internal complexity.
I think so. It provides a clear structure for improving that reliability and coordination we talked about, making the whole system more effective and hopefully more user-focused.
The core idea being these internal components as toolkits, plus strategies for trying alternatives within a toolkit.
Or switching toolkits entirely if the plan needs rethinking. That in-toolkit and cross-toolkit exploration is key.
And it really connects back nicely to that initial action plan, doesn't it? Those identified weaknesses are precisely what the tool planner approach seems designed to address.
Absolutely. The action plan diagnosed the symptoms, and the tool planner analogy provides a potential cure or at least a strong treatment plan.
So the big takeaway for everyone listening, Compare is being engineered to be more robust and efficient by thinking of its internal parts like a well-organized toolbox.
Yeah.
It's not just having the tools, but having strategies, backup tools, different approaches for when things inevitably get tricky.
Yeah, and it really shows this interesting trend in AI and system design, borrowing successful concepts from one area, like LLMs using external APIs, and applying them to solve problems in a different context, like internal system orchestration.
It makes you think about the fundamental principles of good organization and problem solving, wherever they're applied.
Definitely.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, our listener. How do you manage your own complex tasks or projects? Think about your skills, your resources, your own internal team.
Mm-hmm.
Could thinking in terms of toolkits, specific skill sets, and exploration, having backup plans or different angles of attack, help you be more effective when you hit a roadblock?
What are your go-to toolkits when tackling something challenging? Do you have strategies for when Plan A fails?
Something to ponder. Maybe even check out some of that tool planner research if you're curious about the original concepts. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.